Hey everybody! Recently I played another game and I got the Slav Exchange again. And if you guys recall the last video, it was a game where Black had played knight to f6 in this position, and of course we capture, and he took with a g pawn. In this game, I want to show. I faced the first time my opponent avoided playing the knight out immediately, and here played bishop f5, which lets us go into a really interesting line that I hadn't had a chance to play yet, and I actually didn't play that well. I lost it, so I spent a lot of time analyzing, and I wanted to show you guys the resulting analysis. It's a complicated position. There's lots of tactics to happen on, and I think that it's one of the situations where we have a clear advantage, but it's useful to have seen it before. So here we play e4, and they take, and we push past, and this is our idea. The knight jumps forward, and we come out with this check, and we're going to get our pawn back, of course, but we're also forcing them to block something with this file here. In the course, we cover the knight capture, trying to hang on to this pawn a bit. But bishop to d7, I think, is a pretty natural looking move. And of course, we just grab. We take the pawn. And knight to g6, honestly, I think f6 actually is the best move, but nobody wants to play f6 here. So knight g6, and then here I played bishop to c4, and we're still following the game that I played. And bishop to c4 is a fine move, except that there's a nice tactic here that you should see. Knight to b5. So notice that this king is already in a smothered position, so that any check is going to be a mate. And of course, this just threatens knight to d6. It also, note, threatens the knight to d7 idea as well, if we can support it. And it's not actually possible for Black to deal with these. Maybe one way of trying to do it is to play queen to b8, and this doesn't work. We just play rook to c8, rook to c1, and he cannot stop us from this check. He can play knight f6, and we can just grab it, takes, and then we're just winning a clean exchange. We still have a great attack. The other option was to play queen b6 or queen a5. They're going to work out pretty similarly. If queen a5, we can just block with check, and he's forced to go back to b6, and we get a pretty similar situation. Here, we can play bishop to e3, and now, if he moves to here, we'll play b4, and then we're doing great. So knight f6, and no problem. We just grab, he takes, and we jump in here with the fork, and we grab the rook here, and we're going to get this back. Our knight's going to escape, and we're just going to be up some clean material. So earlier in the game, we should keep an eye open for these knight b5 ideas. Again, I guess I should point out that if after knight b5, after knight b5, you can't take it either, just because we give a check and you have to block with your queen. So that was an important thing to note there. But bishop to c4, just standard development, and we still have a pretty good position. It's really tough for Black to figure out how to deal with this. Now, I expected the next couple moves, and I had seen my plan. Why I played bishop to c4 is I knew that he was going to kick my queen, and I wanted to drop my queen back to e2, and I wanted to have this bishop here trying to prevent e6 from happening. Because I assumed that after h6, which I expected, I wanted to be able to drop the bishop back here. I did not want the bishop blocking where my queen was eventually going to want to retreat to, and I certainly didn't want to go to f4 or h4 and allow this knight to capture, which once this knight moves, then it's suddenly very easy to play g6, and Black is going to start untangling. So this is why I played bishop to c4. Played h6 as expected. I dropped back to d2, and now knight f6. Note that e6 is still not possible, even though we don't have a pen anymore. It's still just terrible, absolutely terrible. We'll just take it. He captures back, and after this check, he's forced to come up with a king. Nobody wants this. So knight to f6, pretty logical, and I just drop back to e2, and now rook to c8, and here is where I started to go astray, because I just now figured out here that I was like, oh wait, we do have this idea, and of bringing the knight to d6. So I played, in my move, knight to b5, and he went queen to b6, and notice the eval drops to dead zero, and I tried to force the issue. I think I played bishop to b4, and it got complicated, it got sharp, and I miscalculated. But instead, just the simple knight to f3. Now, I didn't like this because I thought he's going to play out, and then I have a check. He can transfer this knight to here, and I thought he was doing great. But turns out he's not. We'll look at that line. But I don't even have to go down this route. I can simply just castle. And we're way up on development. e6 is still a difficult move to play. And if he captures the bishop, so what? We give a check. He's forced to drop back with a knight. We can play queen takes f3. This is not easy. He still can't play e6 very comfortably. He can try a6, which is a nice move. We drop back, b5. I thought this was a cool sacrifice. We just take, and this knight is stuck. This pawn is stuck. This knight really doesn't have anywhere to go. Tries to go to e5. We drop back. We're threatening to take it because it's not protected. And there's really nothing better than to play knight to c5, but then we just have bishop f4. And the knight is going to be kicked. It's going to be forced to move out of the way, and this is really uncomfortable pressure. After bishop f4, you can see we have a 4-point advantage. It's really tough. The computer thinks that the best thing is just to give up the exchange, and these two passed pawns plus an exchange is going to be more than enough. Again, one of the things I'm noticing about this position as I've played around with it with doing some analysis is that we shouldn't be super terrified of trades. In a lot of ways, trades are maybe even good for us because these two pieces are locked away. They're not getting out. All of our pieces are totally free to move around. We can bring all of them to the game very, very quickly, which gives us a pretty huge material superiority. So if we trade off a couple pieces, for example, let's say we trade off the bishops and for the two knights. In that situation, we would essentially be up a whole rook on the board and two connected passed pawns because these guys aren't even playing. So going back to the sort of the main line, played bishop to g4, and then he gives this check, and then knight to d7. So no problem. We go knight to e4, again highlighting this trouble with this d6 square. We're threatening mate again. For example, if he just tries to take our knight, not going to happen. We're just going to grab. No problem. If something like e6 now, this is not helping a whole lot. e6, we can still just capture it. The bishop comes back to take. We play knight to d4, again trying to bust this open while the king's in the center. We can castle at any moment if we want to, and there's lots of threats here. Bishop to e7, desperately trying to castle. We just grab it, takes, and then a nice little cute little tactic. Cap here, we're threatening to win an exchange. Of course, he takes it. We take here. Anything he blocks with, we're going to take the knight. If he blocks with the knight, we're going to take the bishop. And then the nice one, if he blocks with the queen, we have bishop takes knight. And we're going to win our piece back and the exchange, and we're going to be able to trade queens with a totally winning game. So bishop to e7, we can grab here, and this is just awful. This rook is forever entombed. This king is forever weak. We can quickly castle and start creating threats very quickly here. So again, not e6. e6 is almost always going to be pretty terrible. At some point, he's going to be forced to play it because we're not going to let this knight get away. This knight still doesn't have any really good squares to go to. It's very difficult to move. So, going back, playing queen b6, trying to stop this, we can just castle, just calmly castle. And we're not worried about a capture here. So, for example, because this bishop is the only thing defending this guy since the queen came out to defend here, if we get bishop takes f3, we can throw in this in-between check, and the king is going to come out, and this is obviously not what black is hoping for. So I thought something like knight to h4 looked problematic because it's really trying to hammer down here. But just simply rook ac1. This rook is now undefended because the queen came out. We're threatening mate immediately. You capture here, I'm going to mate you. You capture here, I'm going to take with a pawn, and then your bishop is hanging, and I'm going to mate you. So it's really difficult. You can try to capture, but me just taking back is not helping. We're still threatening mate. King to d8, that's not a move you want to play. That's really not a move you want to play. I mean, perhaps, you can't move the queen back because we still have this mate threat. What else to do? You could try to play e6 now, but I don't think it's going to work a lot better than it did last time. We're going to capture, and now you're probably forced to even take with the pawn. Yeah, because of the knight going to hang here. So something like king to d8, trying to keep the rook out. Bishop to e3, we hit the queen. And after queen to a5, we just have a very simple queen c2. And good luck trying to deal with all this. This is a check. Sure, you can move the knight, but you're going to start dumping material. So instead, I thought maybe it tries to just move the rook out of the way and defend this knight and prepare to capture here. It doesn't really help a whole lot. There's a nice shot here, bishop to a5. Remember, this queen cannot move from defensive d6. So we're threatening to win an exchange, and there's just nothing to do about it. We take back with the pawn. Again, we needed to keep the queen on this line. Often, when there's a capture on f3, we're taking with the g-pawn because we want to keep the queen lined up, locking in this e-pawn. Queen to g6 with check, trying to get out. No problem. We just move out. We just move to block with the knight. And queen to d6. I mean, what else? I mean, it's not sure what else you're going to do. The queen to d6 comes and tries to defend the knight because we're threatening to capture. And if the rook takes, we have this rook check and then rook mate. So let's just take a look at that. So give a random move. We can do something like this is super bad. So the queen was coming across to try to prevent that. Let's get back to where we were. Queen to d6. And really, we can get fancy. The computer's giving some like queen to c, or sorry, rook to c5 idea, or rook to c4. I don't remember which. They're kind of weird moves. We can just take, king takes, and queen to c4, and again, super big problems. So there's a few key ideas here that I wanted to try to highlight. We do have this knight to b5 idea. It keeps cropping up with ideas that come into d6, coming to c7. Another thing to note is that when e6 happens, we're almost always taking. And the other thing is that we can show some patience in this line. We don't have to be in a big hurry. There is no clear way that black can get these pieces out. As long as this knight is stuck here, this pawn can't move, that means that this bishop and this rook are never moving. And we can take some time and just try to organize our pieces. We can castle, get everything out, play with all of our pieces. And it's a pretty interesting line and a lot of fun to play. And I think there's probably a lot more analysis that needs to happen in this. But I do think that what we've seen here is a good place to get started with some of the ideas and to start feeling comfortable in this position so that when you do face it, you're going to be a lot more likely to find all the complications than your opponents are. Anyhow, I hope this helps. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.